Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore. I'm excited to have XYPN member Julie Ford, founder of Ford Financial Solutions, on the show today. Julie started her career on the accounting side before moving into financial planning. After working as a paraplanner, she took some time off to be with her new baby, but after baby number 2, decided it was time to jump back into financial planning. She wanted to work with her peers, and after not finding a job opportunity in the New York area to do so, she decided to launch her own firm. When she started, her husband was making a good, stable income, and so she wasn't as concerned about pricing and being profitable. Over the last several years, however, he launched his own estate planning business and works in her firm some as well. So she shared how her perspective on revenue and expenses have changed now that they're both entrepreneurs. Julie puts a big emphasis on living her own great life as they travel during the summer months to see family, focus on not working 40 hours weeks, and are as involved in their kids' lives as possible. It's really an awesome story that you can have it all, but it takes a lot of work to get there, a lot of intentionality, and as she said, a willingness to make a little bit less money. Is bookkeeping a major pain point for you? If so, you're not alone. Many financial advisors hate bookkeeping, and guess what? They're often terrible at it too. Enter the Bean team at FA Bean Counters powered by XY Planning Network. Their free chart of accounts template will help you tackle one of the most basic but often incorrectly done bookkeeping tasks. Visit fabeancounters.com/XYPN radio to download the template and learn how to set up your chart of accounts like a pro. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/197. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here is my interview with Julie. Hey, Julie, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me.
So just give listeners a quick overview of your practice, where you're located, number of clients, if you have a particular niche market, and then we'll dig into the details.
Okay. I'm located in New York City. I started my firm in 2015, and I roughly serve, it really swings, but somewhere around 40 households a year. And most of those are young couples, largely young families in their 30s and 40s. I do work with a fair number of individuals, just young professionals. But yeah, it's a lot of growing families.
So 4 years in the business now.
Yes. Though caveat, so I started my firm in 2015, but I had not yet found XYPN. And so I did not, once I found XYPN and I hauled through all of the podcast episodes in December of 2015, I was like, oh, obviously I need to register and become an XYPN member. So my RIA has existed since early 2016, but I've been doing what I'm doing since 2015.
Okay, awesome. And you said the number of clients swings. So I assume that means a lot of project-based work or one-time plans?
I do, yeah. So I now am about half and half, ongoing clients and project clients. My projects currently span a minimum of 6 months typically, but from the get-go, I've always had a large number of projects in my client base. And so, yeah, so the number swings because of that reason. It just depends on who needs help, who finds me, and what my capacity is at the time.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely dig into that because that's it. That doing a minimum of 6 months is definitely unique. So I want to hear more about that. Before we jump into more of those details, though, sort of looking back, I'm always curious about career paths and what led you to start your own financial planning firm. So where did you start your career? Were you in financial services from the get-go?
I was. So I was in public accounting. I'm a CPA. And so I knew early on in college that I wanted to be a financial planner, even though I did not know if there was an industry for that or didn't know what that looked like, just knew that I wanted to be doing that and helping people just be smart with their money and help sort of elevate financial literacy. But I was studying accounting. And so I just continued that track and did public accounting for a couple years in New York. And then as soon as I could find an opportunity to move into the financial planning industry, I did. And so I was fortunate to find like a paraplanner, like admin support role at a financial planning firm. And so I was able to get my foot in the door that way, which was awesome. And then did that for a handful of years. And then my husband and I had our first son. And so I stepped out and took a break and was home with him. I did pro bono work just on my own, sort of through the old firm that I was with and the local FPA chapter, and just like people in my network who would find me. But when I left, I didn't have a clear vision. I didn't know what would be possible for me re-entering the industry and working for clients on my own. And so when the years are all super fuzzy now, but after we'd had our second child, I started to get more serious about figuring out when and how to get back to financial planning and doing it for people that were in a similar season of life who did not need asset management. Then, a lack of options to do what I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it led to me just deciding to start my own firm in 2015.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of XYPN members that they didn't set out to be entrepreneurs. There are two types of business owners. There are those of us who just like love starting businesses, and there's those of us that just really love the work, and the opportunities just are not out there to do the type of work that we want to be able to do with the type of client we want to be able to do it with. So it is amazing the number of people in our network and probably in financial services in general that are business owners but aren't. Didn't set out to be business owners. How do you feel like that's been for you? Not as starting a business, not necessarily as someone who was like just looking to start a business. I feel like it's definitely a different road.
Yeah, it is. Looking back, it feels very appropriate and it feels like a really great fit for our family and our season of life. But it definitely was a last resort for me. I was fortunate in that I was able to see financial planning done well. And so I had great exposure and I knew that it existed. It wasn't where I was not a natural fit to serve like my peers. And so I at least had a vision of how it could look and that it could be done. But so we were fortunate in that my husband was working and had a job and we were able to live off of his salary alone. And so I don't know that I would have had the guts to start my own practice if there had been like the need for that income right away, right? Like it felt low risk at the time because I was already just doing pro bono work and I felt pretty stubborn. I didn't want to work and be away from my kids unless I could do what I wanted to do in the way I wanted to do it for who I wanted to do it for. And so it was not hard deciding to start my own firm. I think looking back now, we do rely on my income and we're in a very different situation, which we can get into. But if the circumstances we're in now had existed then, I don't know if I would have had the guts to do it, but I'm so glad that I did. And in retrospect, it feels like a really great fit. I had no idea what I'm currently doing was possible. When I set out to start my firm, I had really low expectations around profitability. Again, this is before I'd found XYPN. And I think there are several New York planners that were starting their firms around the same time, but we weren't connected and we didn't know each other. And so I wish that I had known all of those amazing people at the time and we could have been a really great support system for each other. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
It does. Just out of curiosity, were you doing a lot of pro bono work through a particular organization or were you just doing that sort of on your own?
It was, I'd say, so the firm that I was working at, that lead advisor really had a heart for that kind of work. And he's very connected to the community. So people would just find him and I would end up helping him on those cases. And then through the FPA here locally, I'm not involved as much anymore, but there was a pretty active pro bono chapter that I joined right away. And that gave me some access. And then, I've been in the city for a long time as well. And so just through my personal network, people know what I do, and I'm passionate about it. And so people would just refer people to me. So it was very like not well organized and ad hoc, but it was easy for me to continue on when I left and had our first son with some of the people that I was already working with, to continue working with them. And I didn't have a huge capacity at that time when I was home, but yeah, it was very organic in that way.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. It's always, we have a lot of advisors that want to be able to give back and want to be able to get involved. We recently had Dan Moisen, who's heavily involved in the Foundation for Financial Planning, on the podcast, just to share those opportunities. So always curious how folks are finding those pro bono opportunities. It is interesting that it doesn't sound like your case, but I remember advisory firms I've worked at and have talked to would consider working with the clients that you are currently working with. Like those would have been their pro bono clients, the ones you built your business working with, because they'll say, oh, they don't have $1 million, but I guess we'll do a plan for them for free because they're a good person or we want to help them. So kind of interesting how that has also evolved to where we're able to actually serve those clients as clients and not on a pro bono basis. But so you mentioned that you started the firm but didn't get registered for a year. Were you really, did you just have a different focus in terms of not managing investments or talking about investments and just really focused on planning? Because that's a question that always comes up in terms of coaching versus planning, and where's the line for registration? Sort of how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I've always been more focused on planning, and especially with a background in pro bono work, there wasn't the need to provide investment advice. So it was very easy to not touch that. And where my desire was to really help people just manage their cash flow and be smart about paying off debt. It was more of the just like first line of defense, like that coaching work that's so critical before you can even get to the point of talking about, okay, now how should we invest the money that's left over that you don't need for debt repayment or emergency savings. Yeah. And I felt like I could coach people on investments and just help educate them on allocation and just, educate them on the industry without getting specific enough. But the more I went along, I realized I cannot stay out of the weeds of their investments. And I wanted to be able to give specific recommendations around investment advice. It made sense. I had to register. Just by nature, I like to go really deep and really wide with my work with clients. And so it was kind of inevitable. At some point, I was going to be doing work that was comprehensive enough to necessitate registering.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a question that comes up in our compliance advice. This is not legal advice, is always get registered, only because you have to defend yourself to a regulator who wants to oversee the work that you're doing as to why they do not get to oversee the work that you're doing. So we generally recommend it. There is certainly this gray area currently of, well, I'm not doing investment management or giving securities related advice, so I should be okay. But we just always recommend get registered. It's not that hard.
Yeah. If I had found XYPN first, I would have. I couldn't find anybody that was similar to me doing what I was doing. And, there were those people out there. I was not familiar with the fee only industry even when I started. And so I would have registered right out of the gate, but I was just doing coaching. And I got a little sidetracked on, just some literacy focused projects with friends. And so my ramp up was very slow in 2015. But by the time I realized I found XYPN and realized that this could be more substantial than I realized, and there is something here, then it was a no-brainer to register.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And again, that's been a learning experience. It's funny that 2015 feels like a lifetime ago because XY was just getting started and we've learned a lot and our advisors have learned a lot. But for the advisors out there thinking about launching, every now and then they'll hear that story and they're like, oh, I don't have to register. And then they run. And it's like, no, hang on. We've learned some. So talk to me about the process that you go through in terms of planning. So you said you have ongoing clients and you have some of the one-time clients. So what is your current process for providing financial planning?
So currently I start everybody off with a 6-month comprehensive engagement. I'll do an intro call. I collect very minimal amount of information before that call. And that's really just to help me make sure am I potentially the right fit? If I'm not, I would much rather save you the time and point you in the right direction and refer you to somebody else that I know in the area. But yeah, we have an intro call, and then I'll, sort of propose a 6-month engagement or direct them elsewhere. Sometimes I'll do 3 months, but I've started to realize 6 months just works a lot better for the majority of people. And in that 6-month period, we will meet roughly 4 times. The first 2 meetings are around that first client meeting, creating the plan and reviewing the plan together and just sort of creating this big picture framework. And then we spend the following 5 months or so working on taking action and implementing recommendations. And then after that point, people are free to keep going with ongoing planning or not. I have really enjoyed, not everybody needs ongoing advice. Sometimes they either can't afford it or the complexity just doesn't warrant it, or they're just more do-it-yourselfers and they just kind of wanted this, gut check, third-party objective advice, and then they're great on their own. And so I've really loved being able to provide that. It's allowed me to work with far more people than I would have been able to if I was exclusively doing ongoing engagements. I love not just creating a plan and recommendations for people, but helping them put them in place. When I started, I would just do a one-time plan, and we would, we'd meet once, I'd write the plan, and then we'd meet to review it, and then people were on their own. And, just too many questions come up along the way as people are trying to take action on things, or they just don't get life insurance. They don't get their estate plan in order. And so I like being around to support them as they make decisions, sort of, tweak recommendations as life happens. It's kind of unbelievable in a 6-month period how many babies and job changes and moves that can happen in an engagement. And so I love being able to be adaptive and sort of tweak what I'm recommending as life happens and make sure that they get key recommendations, key things in place, and that by the end of 6 months, things are well organized. They've made a lot of progress. And then from there, some people will continue on and some won't.
Yeah, that's always the challenge with one-time plans. It's just overall implementation. I mean, how many times have we done the one-time plan and eventually that client comes back and they're like, I haven't done anything. Because I always found clients did the majority of the implementation the 48 hours before our next meeting. So it would just sit on the shelf.
Yeah, which is totally fine, right? That's, as long as it gets done, it's fine. And for most of it, it's far more efficient to batch together all of our life admin tasks and haul through them. But over a 6-month period just ensures that the majority of things is going to get done. And I'm going to be able to answer questions that come up. I feel like it's a better use of my time, the client's money. And yeah, one thing I've done for people where they just can't afford it, it's not the right investment for them to engage in a one-on-one 6-month engagement, as I created these online courses. And that was my, by moving to 6 months, it does increase the fee. And so that's hard for some people. But so I'm trying to come up with solutions where I can offer somebody help kind of regardless of where they're at and what their means are.
So what do you mean it increases the fee? Talk me through your fee schedule and how that works together.
Yeah. So I charge a flat fee, but it's based on complexity. I would say it's complexity pricing, right? That's what drives things. But the reason why the fee goes up with complexity is because I'm spending more time. So I'm roughly sort of internally calculating how many hours that I think that I need to block out of my schedule for that 6-month engagement, and that drives the fee. And so when I was only having 2 meetings with a client and writing a plan, that's far less time than what I would spend over the course of 6 months, where I need to make sure that I have a certain level of capacity, availability for these people to field questions, these review meetings that we do. So the cost was just less for a very brief engagement.
Okay, that makes sense. So it wasn't that it got more expensive for ongoing than for the one-time plan.
Yeah, I mean, my fees have gone up just like every other XYPN advisor that starts off, really lowballing things, undervaluing what they're doing. Yeah, so there has been that dynamic for sure.
Let's talk about that. What was your fee structure when you first started and sort of your hourly rate?
I think I will occasionally just do like an hourly engagement if somebody, I now reserve that exclusively for past clients that are coming back to me and just want to revisit and talk about something new or do a quick review. But when I started, I believe I maybe did a handful of just hourly engagements, and I probably was pricing myself around $150 an hour. I'm closer to $250 now, but yeah, because I am trying to remember. I was really undercharging when I first got started. So I feel like a majority of plans, I was probably charging somewhere between like $500 and $1,000 for a comprehensive
way
plan.
Too low.
Oh, no. Yeah, you live, you learn.
Yeah, I'll say it's admittedly a weakness that we've had at XY is that we didn't realize until our first benchmarking survey when we saw how low fees were coming out of the gate and how much they were going up over time that they could have started, maybe not at the level that you're at today, but it could have been a lot closer. So, depending on cost of living area, I mean, I don't know of very many areas that you need to charge less than $200 an hour. So for advisors out there, you can just start at 200 or 180 if you want to number divisible by 60, if you want to bill to the 15 minutes, if that's what you want to do. But ultimately, your time and expertise is worth significantly more than that. But it sounds like your hourly was low, but you were also trying to be extremely fast. Were you, if you were charging $500 to $1,000, were you working way more hours than that was compensating you for, or were you able to stay within those hours?
Oh yeah. No, I was definitely working more hours than I was charging for. I didn't want to, it's so much easier just to work off of a flat fee. In order to figure out what that appropriate fee should be, I'm getting better at estimating on average how much time I need to assume I'm going to spend. But yeah, I think I had a hard time with that because my, starting off really enjoying pro bono work and really wanting quality financial planning to be accessible and affordable for everyone. And we also, we were not relying on my income when I started. And so I had less drive to price myself appropriately. Everybody's, unique circumstances sort of play into how they're pricing themselves.
How do you figure out how many hours? I mean, obviously you have, 5 years of experience now in terms of doing this, but, you sit down with a client, is it back of napkin math on, this feels like a 20 hours over the next 6 months? Or do you have a sort of a rigid, like, if they have this situation, it'll be this number of hours and this other thing will add a certain number of hours?
Yeah, I now have that spreadsheet with, based on, meetings, creating the plan, emails, admin, and based on situation. So I'm much more precise now, but when you're starting, like most people, like you're creating the process as you go. So you really have no idea how much time you're spending. And you've got a zillion other things you're trying to do on top of trying to figure out how to get your kid into kindergarten in New York City, which is a nightmare. And so there's so many other things that feel like higher priority and more urgent business and life tasks that I was not great about tracking my time. And it was very, very, very rough and wrong estimates, but you get better.
Okay. Makes sense. So do you have a more formal process now, or how has that developed for you?
I do. So I have a spreadsheet. And so before, and I've also become much better at asking the right questions before and during that prospect meeting to get a sense for complexity and what the client needs. And so I'll kind of make notes as I go, and then kind of tweak this little spreadsheet that I have, and that helps me come to the right number.
Yeah, it's always a struggle, but one of those things that you try to figure out over time by tracking your time and sort of figuring out where it goes. What do you do if a client's complexity ends up being greater than expected? So we all want to provide this expectation on what things are going to cost, and that is awesome from a client perspective. But from the provider perspective, what happens if it takes 10 less hours or 10 more hours than you expect? Do you make adjustments based on that?
So I have not. I've just eaten that myself, right? And that's one reason why I do this 6-month engagement, because before an ongoing client engages with me, I I want to know kind of what to expect ongoing and make sure that they're a good fit and I'm a good fit for them. I have not had too many examples where the complexity is greater. I think largely just because I've figured out what questions I need to ask to get to the bottom of that. And I also make it really specific. Here is what I do. All of a sudden, if you add some new dynamic or there's something you didn't share with me before the engagement started, that's outside of the scope of the engagement. And so we can amend the engagement and sign a new client agreement, but that has not happened. I think also when you're getting started, you're going to see new things that you haven't encountered before. And so you're going to have to spend some time educating yourself on new things. And so any time that I was spending time researching a question or an issue that had not come up, I wouldn't really consider that as like engagement time. And I like undercharged or, I underquoted. That was more, this is just time I need to spend learning and mastering this area, because if it's not for this client, it's going to be the next. And I saw that, I took that with a grain of salt.
Okay, that makes sense. It's always interesting. Is it appropriate to charge for the time you spend learning? And it feels weird to do that, but then it's also like, once you know it, you can do it so much faster. So you can provide all this value in a matter of minutes. Talk to me about your ongoing service. So you have these clients that come in, they do the 6 months, and then they want to continue with you. What changes about that service model, and what are the types of clients that you find ultimately opt into that service?
So it really we just continue doing what we're doing. With ongoing clients, I'll meet at least twice a year. To sometimes through that first year, we need to continue meeting quarterly, or if some big life event happens, we'll meet kind of off schedule. But generally, the next 6 months, we're still working on getting majority of the plan implemented and getting things cleaned up and organized. And then we just sort of cycle into this reviewing things. And so 2 meetings kind of update the plan annually. But for a lot of my clients, they're navigating a lot of life changes. And so life stuff that we need to talk about and factor in, it just happens naturally. Babies, moves, job changes, starting business, losing jobs, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's a lot of just being available to address whatever new life situations come up. I end up giving a lot of help and education to parents around navigating the either childcare or school systems in the city, just because I've been through it and it's kind of a beast. And that often ends up being part of our conversations too. I just added investment management as well. So for ongoing clients, that will be a new thing that I now offer when it's appropriate.
All right. Yeah. Childcare and daycare and schools is hard enough in Montana. I cannot imagine in a big city. So what is the investment management service, and how are you doing that and pricing it?
Yeah. So I am using First Ascent as a TAMP, and I am bundling the cost of that into my monthly ongoing planning fee. So, and the client will then pay First Ascent's fee. So again, my pricing is based on complexity, and there's just a flat monthly fee. I imagine most clients will pay for the ongoing, continue to pay monthly from their bank account or credit card. But then, if someone wants, it can be paid out of an investment account. But I'm lumping that service into the ongoing planning fee. And so there's no AUM component.
Okay, that makes sense. What is your deliverable? What does your deliverable look like? You're doing these, 6-month plans which can turn into an ongoing relationship. So are you doing a written plan or a list of bullet points? What does a client get from you in order to implement the financial plan?
It's a written plan. So it's a mix of a narrative and sort of my assessment of where they're at and sort of speaking into some of their life questions and around kind of how they're balancing spending, saving, giving, all of it. And then very specific bulleted action items. So it's a written document. And then also there's a cash flow worksheet. I do, especially since a fair number of people, it's just a project engagement. I want people to have something that they can take with them and that they continue to use on their own, right? So that they have, a spreadsheet that they can continue to think through their cash flow, their budget every year, or whether it's, kind of keeping their goals written out in one place within the spreadsheet, or their insurance policies, how they're doing with their down payment savings, that sort of stuff. So I like to equip people with organizational tools and spreadsheets that they can keep using on their own. I use Right Capital for my financial planning software, and think it's awesome. It's really great. A lot of clients really like their task feature. So after I deliver that written plan, I'll upload all of like the specific actions I've recommended to their task feature, and then it'll shoot them emails and remind them to do things. And after I write the plan, Right Capital holds everything, and that becomes going forward like the dynamic place where we're keeping track of what needs to get done and add new recommendations, tweak old ones. And that's been really helpful.
Okay, makes sense. You're living in the big city. You're a working mom with a couple kids, and managing it all. How do you manage it all? I mean, are you working 80-hour weeks trying to keep up with everything? Do you find that you have found a way to create balance in your life?
Yeah, we are scrappy is what I would say, which I think probably a lot of parents that resonates with. So my husband and we're now both self-employed. We do not work insane hours. That's kind of the norm in New York. And we've both been there and done that and seen the cost to our families and our health. And that just doesn't work for us. So it helps immensely having both kids in school full time. It was a real struggle until we got to that point. I'd say neither of us works full time. Like we're sort of making this gamble that we're working a little bit less than our peers probably. Like there are certainly weeks when I work full time, a little more than full time. It kind of ebbs and flows. But if you kind of averaged out both of our hours across, the whole year, we definitely don't average 40 or 50 hours a week, either of us. We are choosing to work a little less, make a little less money for the sake of being very present with our kids right now while they're young. And, we're all here, we're healthy, and we really enjoy spending time with them at this season of life. But we're really scrappy, and we tag team because we're self-employed and we create our own schedules. We can be really flexible with school drop-offs and pickups. We're able to, we are out of the city for a majority of the summer visiting family, and we will work remotely. And so our schedules really ebb and flow around our kids' schedules. But yeah, it's a really delicate balancing act.
Well, and people will always assume that entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, you own your own business, you can work whenever you want, and it's like, sort of, but I still have to work. Sometimes the extra flexibility can be a little stressful, and when you have two partners doing it that way, is also challenging. So you had mentioned earlier that your husband, it sounded like had a full-time job, maybe salaried when you started your business, but things have changed. So can you talk about the evolution that y'all have experienced since you've started your firm?
Yes. So my husband's an attorney, and he was working in big law for a long time. The hours are grueling, as with a lot of industries. And we eventually decided it was worth just taking a leap and just trying and seeing what it looked like, both of us being self-employed. And so the more potential we saw with what I was doing, it just became more and more appealing against the backdrop of his like crazy hours, no flexibility, no control over his hours. It just felt like it was worth the risk to experiment with him doing something else. And so he left in 2017, and he started his own law firm. He does estate planning, which we have these two businesses that are very complementary, which is amazing. And I think we're in a place that neither of us ever thought we would try or would be possible. But so we collaborate a lot. So if my clients need estate planning, most of them will hire him, and he works with other clients of other advisors. But we felt like there was potential. There's enough overlap in our professional worlds and our interests that it just seemed like we should try it. Yeah, he does. He helps me out, and we call him my director of operations. So he does a lot of work within my firm, and then he has his separate law firm, which I'm not involved in. They have to be separate entities, but it's been fun. We're like most entrepreneurs, we're making it up as we go. We, are very, I think there's a lot of opportunities for where we go from here. It's been fun and challenging and worth the risk and, the hit to income instability for the time being.
So just out of curiosity, do you feel like you starting a business helped sort of encourage him to maybe start a business and just seeing that? Or do you think he would have done that regardless of what you did?
Yeah, no, definitely. He kind of talks about it as like we have like these slingshot careers, right? Like when he had a stable paycheck, that allowed us the freedom for me to start my firm and kind of explore what was possible there. And then, once I had some stability and we saw some traction, it gave him then the freedom to, take a risk and leave his job and start his firm. So we very much are kind of tag teaming and supporting each other. And I don't think he would have made this leap if I had not been doing what I'm doing and we had seen like the potential and how great it is for a family to have this flexibility. And also, removing the burden of just one person having an income and fully supporting the family financially, being able to share that load together allows him to take the risk he's taking now.
Yeah, it would be an interesting question to track. It'd be hard to get comparison data for it, but just to see the decisions that partners make after one of our members starts their financial planning firm. Because I hear it a lot where folks either go off and their partner starts their own business, or they become they choose to stop in their career and be a stay-at-home parent because that wasn't a reality or a possibility before. It's really interesting just to see the, entrepreneurship at its core is you living your great life, which is why it's such an honor with the work that we get to do here at XY. Is we believe that we're helping our advisors help their 100 clients live their great life and get access to real financial planning, but we're also helping our almost 900 XYPN advisors achieve their great life through entrepreneurship. And that's not everybody's, great life, but that is a lot of folks. But sort of this, also the partners are involved in this and seeing that and being able to start building their great life, which is just an awesome reality to see.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's funny. I think both of us, we've been married for over 10 years. Neither of us would have believed that this is where we would be 10 years down the road. Yeah, so it's really fun. I've been so passionate and driven about being a financial planner for a really long time. The thought that I would have a spouse that would like join me in that and participate in that dream and make it larger and sort of enhance what was possible exceeds all expectations is just really, really awesome. So yeah, it's been a fun adventure so far.
That is awesome. Remind me, what types of clients do you most enjoy working with? You mentioned young professionals and couples. Are there specific issues that you're really digging into with your clients that you're an expert in?
Yeah, so I am an expert in navigating the school landscape for young children. So that has been fun, which is like outside the scope of planning. But I love working with couples and helping them just get on the same page and just stand on a united front and have enough organization and clarity about their financial world that finances are not a source of conflict and that they can, learn to communicate better, work through conflicts better, plan and set goals for themselves better. So I really love working with couples and, helping to just strengthen their relationships in that way through that organization and financial planning. And a lot of my clients are kind of at this crossroads. They're trying to navigate, how do I balance paying off my debt, saving for a home, saving for college, saving for retirement. And just, I love sort of the chaos that is like all these goals and money going all over the place and trying to create a cohesive plan that appropriately balances all those things as best as possible for today. And Yeah, I love it when sort of life decisions and life changes are happening around the planning process, and trying to help counsel people to decide like what's wisdom in this instance, what's based on what we know today and what you value most, what's the best decision for you professionally, for your family, for how you allocate your money. I enjoy that process.
I love it. How do you track your own? We talked about that entrepreneurship is your own great life. It doesn't all come down to the dollars and cents. We talk a lot about revenue and expenses, and all of that is a piece of it. But overall, it really is about you being able to live the life that you and your husband and your family want to live. How do you track success? If it's not just about revenue, it's not just about profit, like how do you track success and how things are going over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do find it's really important to not be overly tuned into the numbers. I'm trying to do a great job of tracking my data for the business and just kind of understanding kind of where I'm trending, what's working, because there is, we need to make sure that we're bringing in enough to like cover our needs and enough of our wants. But I also try to look back at the year and take it in perspective of like what else happened, and sort of make sure that I'm, thinking through what are the major life events, things that came up that were expected or unexpected that we had to navigate at the same time. And which I think it just helps put what I did in the past year in perspective. And also looking back at, so I worked with 40 households last year. Did that work? Was I working too much, right? Like not being tuned in, just being dialed into, am I growing? Is my profitability increasing? But am I working too much? When you love what you do and you're in a city that really values, and there's like this badge of honor for being busy and overworking and exhausted, I feel like you have to proactively ask that question of yourself. I think I maybe went off track there. Did that answer your question?
No, you're good. How often do you revisit that question of, am I on track? How many hours am I working? Is that a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual review?
I think I probably do that either every 6 months or every year. I have a little section of like life events in my just master spreadsheet where I review kind of numbers for the business and kind of also set goals. Like, so when I decided to create this online course, I knew that was going to take away some capacity for one-on-one engagements, and that, my numbers would reflect that. But for me and like my goals and what I want to do in this industry, that was very much worth the sacrifice. Investing that time, it's very like rewarding and satisfying project. And also things like, we want to be able to work remotely and slow down over the summer and the holidays with our kids. And so making sure that I'm like reminding myself of those things. Profitability is not the end goal, that sort of thing. And also, I don't know, when you have small kids, there's always going to be things coming up that you didn't expect, right? Like we were just totally knocked out for the month of January last year, it felt like, because we had this like awful virus. And so just making a note of that, of all of the unexpected things that sucked away some time and capacity during the year, and just putting the whole picture in context, right? Like not getting overly focused on your numbers, which is a really delicate balance as a business owner, because we need to be focused enough on it, but just to not let it totally drive your decisions and how you spend your time and your money.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a balance, because I know some of the business owners out there are sort of like, what do you mean you don't pay attention to numbers? And it doesn't mean you don't pay attention to numbers. It's just that that's not the singular focus. There are more data points than just revenue to pay attention to. And one of the data points is number of hours worked, overall happiness and satisfaction with what you're doing, how your kids are doing and how happy are they, and all of these things. And like you said, there are many of us have been in careers in the past where if our kids got the flu, we would have been at work and there's nothing we could have done about it. And, it's a blessing and an honor to be in a position now where when the kids get sick, you just cancel some meetings, rearrange a little bit and move on, and you get to spend that time at home.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the big projects that you're working on going, into the next 12 to 24 months? What are some of the big pieces that you're thinking about adding to the practice and for your clients?
So right now, top of mind is just integrating investment management, since I just amended my ADV for that. So I think that will be a focus for at least for the next year. I do think I will start to focus on trying to take on more ongoing clients. Again, like everybody starts off with that 6-month project, but I love the project work, but it is more exhausting and time consuming, right? Serving 45 new households as opposed to like all ongoing. And so I do think I would like to have a larger chunk of clients as ongoing. My online course, just continuing to figure out how to use that efficiently in my practice and how to improve it. I think I like thinking about just that education space and equipping people to get organized and answer some of these, big money questions on their own.
Yeah, tell me more about the online course. Who is that really intended for?
I think it's most appropriate for people who just cannot afford a one-on-one engagement. A lot of times when like credit card or other, like when debt payments are taking up a majority of a person's budget, or they have low complexity in their life. And so they don't necessarily need somebody one-on-one to answer all these questions. They can, and if they're kind of do-it-yourself inclined, they can get a decent way there on their own. So currently the courses are marketed towards young professionals and young couples. The couples course, I think there is value in couples kind of at any stage, kind of trying to walk through and get organized together, right? And kind of attacking it as a team. But yeah, I most often, if a prospect reaches out and I can tell that either complexity or price point, it does not make sense for them to engage me one-on-one, I'll direct them to the course and then offer to, chat with them after they go through it and answer questions and get a little bit more specific and personal. But I find there's a big gap between reading a personal finance book and engaging an advisor one-on-one. In theory, like somebody can be laying out all the steps of what you need to do in a book, but it's not necessarily like, in a action plan format, or you don't have like the spreadsheets or the tools that you need. And so my thought was that the course kind of stands in the middle of those two options. Because previously, like if I either did not have capacity or somebody, I just was not a great fit for someone, I can refer them to, some books and some articles and try to give them some quick advice, but want to be able to offer something more substantial. So I think one is $249, the one for individuals, and the one for couples is $299. Some people will then I'll offer like an hourly rate after the course if somebody wants to just sit down and get a little bit deeper, more specific, answer questions. I'll do that. Yeah. Sometimes if somebody's like, if I haven't done an intro call with someone previously and they reach out, I say, why don't you take the course and then let's delay this intro call until after the course. And then we can be you can send me your spreadsheets and stuff. And then we can have a more productive, work session after the course.
And what platform do you use to host the course?
I'm using Teachable, which has been great so far.
Yeah. We've used New Kajabi for our Academy platform, but I know there are a handful out there that are really great, low cost, and really help to facilitate the learning experience. You still have to provide the content, but it helps to not have to be piecing together the entire curriculum experience as well.
Yeah. It's been really fun.
So looking, you have a couple of big projects out there with a course, with investment management, rolling that out, trying to onboard more ongoing clients and maybe fewer 6-month engagements. So you're going to be busy. It's going to be an exciting next 12 months.
I think so. Yeah. I love what I do. I can easily get excited about just about any sort of project, whether it's teaching a different group of people or creating content. It's pretty easy to get me excited to move in a couple of different directions. So it's hard to just pick a couple things and stay focused on those for the time being.
Probably the greatest challenge of being an entrepreneur is just staying focused
and
knowing when to say yes and knowing when to say no.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to miss out on awesome opportunities, but you also can't chase every opportunity. There's just too many of them. Yeah, as we're coming to a close, if you look back over the last several years that you've been in business, if you could go back and tell your younger self one piece of advice, one thing that you've learned that you wish you had known then, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
I think I don't know that I would have believed it, but it would have been helpful if I had believed or understood at the beginning the potential for having my own business. That I think I maybe would have approached some things differently, made some different decisions if I had known from the outset that this was going to be possible, that it was possible to run a profitable firm. And I think I wish I had more community with like-minded advisors early on. Like the study group that I have and just the network, there's so many amazing XYPN advisors in the New York area. It's so encouraging and so helpful. And I wish that we had known each other earlier on. I think that would have been really, really helpful.
Absolutely. And like you said, you may not have believed it at the time, but still would have been nice to hear. Well, Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your career path and your story and all the awesome work that you're doing in your firm, and look forward to seeing how the next year goes, because obviously you got a lot going on and a lot of exciting stuff, and it's going to be awesome to see all of that come to fruition. So thank you again.
Sure. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Is bookkeeping a major pain point for you? If so, you're not alone. Many financial advisors hate bookkeeping, and guess what? They're often terrible at it too. Enter the Bean team at FA Bean Counters, powered by XY Planning Network. Their free chart of accounts template will help you tackle one of the most basic but often incorrectly done bookkeeping tasks. Visit fabeancounters.com/XYPN radio to download the template and learn how to set up your chart of accounts like a pro. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.